Just win, baby. Commitment to excellence, the will to win.
It's all about competition. And, I feel like certain people are meant to be in your life for a reason. We all have the same goal, and that's to win. That's what I'm all about.
Definitely a good feeling when you come back to a comfortable position with people that you know and trust, people that you played before. Amazing feeling. Felt like a weight lifted off my shoulder, so I'm happy.
Welcome to a special edition of Raiders Rundown Free Agency. I'm JT the Brick from Raiders headquarters in Henderson, Nevada. Thanks to everybody who's joining us as we got a really big show lined up for you today. Everything is fluid as things could be happening at this moment, but what we wanted to do today was give you a recap so far of where the Raiders are in free agency. A lot of these deals are pretty much pending or about to get done as we welcome you into the new year of the NFL. So a lot going on over the last couple of days. I know Raider Nation is fired up. You got a lot of questions. We got a lot of guests who will join us, including the voice of the Raiders, Jason Horowitz here. He's going to join us first, along with Amber Theoharis and the newest member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Eric Allen, a little bit later on in the show. And as I said, this is a very fluid situation because you'll hear me say per source a few times throughout this broadcast today because a couple of these deals, even though they've been agreed to, they haven't been signed yet, from physicals to getting players in here, and that's all happening here today or over the next couple of days. But I think you know the players who have left, and we wish them well, and the players who are coming in, who hopefully you'll get to know a lot more about here over the next couple of days, next couple of weeks here. And there's been a lot of movement. And we're going to begin per source with Geno Smith, the trade with Seattle for a third-round pick, and that's the big news as the Raiders get their quarterback and the quarterback of the future here. Geno Smith has had a very strong career the last couple of years over in Seattle, and he is reunited with Pete Carroll, which is a really important piece here as Pete Carroll is bringing in someone he's very excited to work with again, and we should all be excited about that. On the screen, as you're watching here on YouTube, I'm thrilled for Malcolm Kuntz. Wow. Considering he got injured last year and didn't play, the fact that he's back again to be on this defensive line is massive, along with the re-signing of Adam Butler, who had a big year last year and played at a very high level. Jeremy Chin comes in from the Commanders, who is a bigger physical safety in this league. Isaiah Palamal has been re-signed. Eric Stokes, a former first-round pick in this league, comes in. Landon Roberts, a linebacker who's been very productive out of Pittsburgh. And Alex Kappa, who's agreed to terms, and he'll add depth or most likely start there at the guard position. We'll jump into that in a little bit. The departures are big because a lot of players are not here anymore, including Robert Spillane, who played at a very high level. He took a deal with the Patriots. Nate Hobbs, who played in the slot. Nate goes to Green Bay. We wish Trayvon Merrick the best. He had a nice run here with the Silver and Black, and he got paid. He had a decision to make. He goes to Carolina. But I want to begin today with Geno Smith and what Geno brings to this franchise. His leadership, his consistency, and the fact, as I said, that he's reunited with Pete Carroll to really have a big moment in his career now as the signal caller of the Silver and Black. From the completion percentage to what he's been able to do in the red zone, his size and strength. I think he's young for his age because he was a backup in the beginning to mid part of his career and didn't play a lot. So he didn't take a lot of hits for a lot of years. But we've seen this guy win a lot of games. And who would have thought over the last 3 years that he's won more games than Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford and some of the better quarterbacks in this league who have played in Super Bowls. So we'll see what happens with Geno. Look at those numbers in 2024. Over 4,300 yards passing, 70.4 completion percentage, 21 touchdown passes here. And I think how familiar he is with Pete Carroll is the key. I talked to a couple of sources in Seattle who told me he is the leader in that building. He's an unbelievable player on the team he was and in the community. 11 years experience here. He's played for a couple of teams, but we should just concentrate on Seattle, where he got a chance to lead the team from 2019 to 2024. A two-time Pro Bowler, the comeback player of the year, and the eighth most TD passes since 2022, 71. So Geno's been highly productive in this league. But I think the most important thing to say about Geno is he'll be a captain, he'll be a leader, and everybody in that locker room will follow him. Covering Geno's entire career, he's had some ups and downs, but when he locked in with Pete Carroll, everything changed. So I was wondering who the Raiders were going to bring in at quarterback. It's very fluid with the 6th pick overall in the first round, but as the Raiders and John Spytek quickly went and got Geno Smith, they wanted to make sure they had a quarterback here in-house. And they got Geno Smith, and I think the feedback's been pretty positive here nationally from the media and throughout the Raider Nation because the numbers don't lie with Geno the last 3 years. You think you know what you're going to get with him, and hopefully he plays even better in Las Vegas, in this dome environment, on this fast field with some of the weapons, including Brock Bowers, that are already established here with the silver and black. But I just saw Max Crosby 10 minutes ago downstairs here, and I'm just so happy for Max, his wife Rachel, their family here, as Max Crosby has agreed to a contract extension. And that has a lot to do with what we'll be talking about today. The fact that Mad Max, the leader of this franchise, is locked up long-term, getting what he deserves going forward, and the face of the franchise and one of the top defensive players in all of the NFL is going to be here for a while. Max told you all that he wanted to be a Raider for life. Max told you that his whole life revolves football-wise around being in this building and being a Raider. And as I talked with him earlier today, he has his foundation event Friday night at Allegiant Stadium, and he can't wait to get in front of Raider Nation again, and he's excited. If you look at what Max has been able to do the last couple of years, Max has proven that he demands a double and triple team. He never stops. He never comes off the field. He got banged up at the end of the year, had a successful surgery, so he'll be back at 100%. And again, he never leaves this building. So when you look at the overall picture of bringing in Geno Smith, the quarterback, and re-signing Max Crosby, both of those moves cost money, especially Max getting $91 million in guarantees, and Geno, per sources, pending what he's going to get going forward here. And then the Raiders went out and made a couple of other decisions that we'll dive into today. What I'm most excited is when you walk into the Raider locker room now, you know who the leaders are. And there's always been a good culture with leadership when it comes from a player perspective, but none bigger than Max Crosby. If you look at all the great players who have ever played for this organization, he is quickly building a path to be one of the great individual players of all time. But Max doesn't care about individual stats. He wants to win. He missed 4 games last year due to that ankle injury, and now he'll be good to go. And think of what he's going to have on that defensive line. To be able to know that Wilkins is going to be back coming off his injury. I mentioned Malcolm Kuntz, who was gone for the entire year. And then Adam Butler coming in. And the fact that he didn't get out of this building because several other teams were interested. Back to Max Crosby. Max recently talking about his future and legacy.
Today's a special day. Being a part of Raider Nation, being here, almost 7 years now. It's been an absolute blessing in so many ways. My family, obviously my wife, my daughter here today. The sacrifice, the ups and downs, the 5 a.m.s, the nonstop commitment to excellence on a daily basis is what this is all about. So I have so many teammates I could thank. I have so many coaches I could thank. I have so many people in general I can thank, including these 2 guys right here, believing in me and giving me this extension. But now I'm just worried and focused on being the best version of myself every single day and giving them everything I got. So, I've said it a million times. I feel like I was meant to be a Raider. I love being here. I love the people. And you look at all the legends that created what this brand is, and that's winning. Ted Hendricks, Marcus Allen, Charles Woodson, the guys like that, the ones that I look up to. That's what I want to solidify, and those guys are all about winning. So, it's one thing to be a face of a franchise, but I want to be a winner, and that's truly all that matters to me. So I know these guys are all about the same thing. The labels and all that thing, all that stuff is cool, but when we're not winning, it's like, what are you the face of? I want to be the face of winning, and that's truly all that matters to me.
Wow, what a tremendous video soundbite there by Max. What a humble guy who really sees the big picture. I'm so happy for Max and his family, and hopefully he's a Raider for life. Now, Pete Carroll, the new head coach of the Silver and Black, obviously very excited that Max is locked up long term. Here's the coach.
This program is built around competition, and we're always in pursuit of finding great competitors, and that will help us build a great team. And there's no way we could find anybody that is more focused and directed and committed to giving everything he's got to every opportunity he's going to get. And so for us to make this statement today is like it fits perfectly. And we're so proud to have Max be part of the organization. But he knows that's just the start of it. I mean, all the rest of it comes after we get after the hard work and the dedication and all of the pursuit that makes this thing really special. So we start with a very special person and a player and a man and a great family man, and all of that just adds up to this is a great day for us.
How about that? 5 years sober for Max, his foundation, and Pete Carroll really excited. I'm excited to bring in the voice of the Raiders, Jason Horowitz. And Jason, great to have you here on our free agent special. And let's jump in and talk about Max Crosby first in the extension, one of the biggest extensions in NFL history.
Yeah, no question. And Max has earned every part of it, right? I mean, he is the first person that's discussed when you talk about who you're trying to figure out when you're playing the Raiders. He is in part of every single game, right? Like we never get through a game where Max isn't, for the most part, in the backfield on multiple plays, sacks, tackles for loss, racing down the line to make tackles, the effort, all those things. You mentioned Adam Butler not leaving the building. We've talked about this many times. EA and I were right there on the sideline day one of padded practice last year. Adam Butler wasn't having his best day. He wasn't really going hard. Max was right in his ear. And then from that day on to the rest of the season, Adam Butler never stopped. So that points to just how contagious I think Max's effort and ability is on his potential teammates. And so I think that's certainly something you want to build around. And Max is now signed through 2029. He had a couple of years left. They gave him the extension. And now it's about getting sure that the rest of this team is one that can compete in the not just the AFC West, but, it's time for Max and what he's been talking about being on a winning team to actually come to fruition.
Well, Jason, it's big. You're calling these games, and Max is playing without Wilkins and Malcolm Kuntz last year. So let's talk about Malcolm Kuntz and start with him because he had an opportunity to leave. I think the Raiders didn't want him to leave the building. John Spytek, Patrick Graham. Let's get into the role that he had in talking to Pete Carroll about this. And now Pete knows he's got a rock-solid young player opposite of Max Crosby.
Well, for the starters, he's the only player that's ever sacked Patrick Mahomes 3 times in one game. It was the Christmas Day victory on the road at Arrowhead a couple years ago, and that was all part of the back half of the season after Antonio Pierce took over as the interim head coach in 2023, and Malcolm Kuntz really came on, JT. It's the real reason that everyone talked about, it was one thing to bring Christian Wilkins, but Christian Wilkins on the inside, there was a real reason that people were talking about what type of defensive line the Raiders were going to have in 2024, and the expectation was that Malcolm Kuntz was going to go from what he did year 3 to just keep it going in year 4. And he never got that chance, right? He got injured in the practice in the lead up to week 1, going into that Chargers game, never got that chance. But I think everyone assumes that expectation is there. And you mentioned Patrick Graham. Malcolm Kuntz credited Patrick Graham and the comfort that he has with the Raiders defensive coordinator because he's been with him now for 3 seasons. He knows what the belief in him. He knows that Patrick's going to put him in positions to succeed. And he also knows what Pete Carroll is all about. And he knows that Pete Carroll's history is one where they've turned a lot of players into guys from the outside, a la like Bruce Irvin and others, into great defensive pass rushers in time. And he believes he can be the next one and be opposite Max, Christian, and get after guys.
Jason, this is the strength of the team. No debate is this front. And if they stay healthy, what they can do. And a lot of Raider Nation cares about that because it changes the young cornerbacks, the defensive backs, and the safeties having the ability to become better playmakers. Adam Butler, what did you see with him last year specifically, with his motor, the way he played in the beginning, middle, and late in games?
I think he was the unsung hero of the defense. And we talked about it a lot. And I know Max is the credit. He gets the credit. And a couple of guys who are now gone, Trayvon Merrick and Robert Spillane, had big roles. And we should not forget about the roles that they had the last couple of years with this defense and how much better both of those guys got. But Adam Butler was one of the unsung best players, a veteran. He's kind of been around the league. He was with New England and Miami, and he had roles, but it was kind of rotational roles. And he's not a rotational guy anymore. I mean, he is a middle of, we are in there every time. He is making plays in the backfield. He is beating guards and centers left and right. He is versatile. He is energetic. And I think he feeds off of the Max Crosby energy. So, the aspect of what will this be like if they are healthy, JT, and we never got to really know that. Malcolm Kuntz, we never saw the entire season. And then the rest of these guys, Christian Wilkins was gone after Game 5. We saw glimpses of it. First half against the Chargers, first half against the Ravens, the Browns game, even though Max, I think that was the game where Max missed his first game of his career. So we saw glimpses of it, but never full games of it, and obviously a full season. So they are healthy. This should be the strength of this team, no questions asked.
All right, I want to get into who we lost and the players that moved on. Robert Spillane was a very good player for this organization, period. And I wish him well. And he got a big offer from New England. And then Trayvon Merrick. So let's start with the departures here. We wish them well. Once a Raider, always a Raider. And what the Raiders are going to have to look forward to going forward as they try to fill the role. Let's start with Robert Spillane, who was an outstanding Raider.
So I think Robert Spillane, JT, is a guy that when we signed him going into 2023, most people were like, who is Robert Spillane? Robert Spillane was. He was a guy who played for Pittsburgh, but he was a backup, had 7 or 8 starts in his last year there filling in, but nobody really knew who he was or what he was capable of. And he came in for Denzel Perryman right away as a free agent from the 2022 to 2023 season. And was a playmaker right from the get-go, and a tackling machine, and a healthy, didn't miss games. The question was, could he cover? Dude had interceptions, multiple ones, both years. So the answer to all that was he became a big-time player. And I think that's a loss because he also became a leader in that spot. So I do think that's a loss. We'll talk about what they're replacing them with because there's still a lot of work to do on the secondary, frankly, and in the middle of that defense. But he became a very big player. And then Trayvon Merrick's a guy, second-round pick when he was taken. He was the Jim Thorpe Award winner. So obviously out of TCU, there was all kinds of talent and all kinds of production. But it took him a couple of years to really get going. But once he did, JT, all the plays that he made up by the line of scrimmage, particularly once Marcus Epps was signed and then Isaiah Pola-Mao filled into that role, he really became a playmaker and a guy that this defense could count on. And so Carolina's getting a guy that is someone who I think most people around the league think is, top 5, top 8 safety in this league, particularly coming up against the run. But I would say this, though, JT, and this is if you buy into PFF and if you buy into rankings, and some people buy into that a little bit, some don't at all. The players that this team at the moment has seemingly replaced them with, Landon Roberts and Jeremy Chin, for much less money than Robert Spillane got from New England and Trayvon Merrick got from Carolina, they're, at least by those metrics, or even better from how they played last year. So again, we'll see. We'll see how they fit in with Patrick Graham. We'll see how they fit in with Pete Carroll and how they fit in with this defense. But from just looking at that perspective, it may be just fine.
Slot corner Nate Hobbs is gone, and Nate wasn't healthy. He just couldn't stay healthy, but he flashed a lot. And another player that got big money to go to Green Bay, and I wish him well. And Jason, I talked about this with you at the Torch on the pregame shows with Eric Allen. I knew we were going to lose players for a number of reasons. One, they're free agents. They have the right to be free and look at other opportunities. And number two, there's new evaluators here. John Spidtek and Pete Carroll evaluate players vastly differently than the regimes that were here before. And they're going to pick their own players. So I expected 2 to 3 players to be gone on defense. And before we get to the players that are replacing these players, Nate Hobbs is a player, if he's healthy, and he was healthy a little bit more, maybe he would have been back. We wish Nate well.
So, JT, I think, and again, this is not any inside information by talking to John Spidtek or Pete Carroll whatsoever. This is simply my own thoughts. I'm surprised at how many of the free agents aren't coming back. right? Adam Butler and Malcolm Kuntz at the moment are the two that are. There are some others that are still at the moment, John Jenkins, Caleb Chase, and some of the others that are still out there. But you go into last year, and then as the season wore on, a defense that 2 years ago at the second half was the best defense in the NFL the second half of that year. And then last year against the run, against the pass was top 10, top 12. Again, points allowed was a lot. But there were a lot of guys that fit in with Patrick Graham. So I think the outside perspective was there'd be more of them back than are. But Nate Hobbs not. We talked about Trayvon Merrick, Robert Spillane, Divine Diablo is now at the Atlanta Falcons. So there's a whole bunch that they have to replace, and maybe even more. The question is, are they replacing them with some of the free agents that are still out there that we don't know about yet? I don't know if that's the case. The Eric Stokes signing is an interesting one. A guy that was a first-round draft pick, had a great rookie season. He flashed with the Packers, but you just mentioned injuries from Nate Hobbs, who's now going to Green Bay. Eric Stokes has dealt with a ton of injuries over the last 3 years since his rookie year. But if he stays healthy, that's a big corner who was a first-round talent who played like it as a rookie. So we'll see, right? But that's kind of how this all works. I think the last couple of years there's been a lot of money to spend, and I think some people have thought that they haven't. I think a little surprise in not getting some of those big names. But my assumption is it's intentional to this point.
You mentioned Stokes, and I'll get to him in a second here, but he was described in the building, someone told me, as a redeemable player. And when I said, what do you mean by that? Well, Al Davis loved those players because Al Davis wanted first-round picks that he couldn't get that were redeemable later on in their career when they became healthy. I'm excited about Jeremy Chin. I watched him play a lot, and I looked at the tape the last couple of days on him. I think this is the first clue of Pete Carroll. This is the first clue of the Legion of Boom. He wants guys on the back end who are nasty, bigger, oversized, stronger, who come and wallop people. Now, I'm not saying he's exactly Earl Thomas or Cam Chancellor, but he's built with that type of body type, significantly cheaper than what Merrick got, as you pointed out. And he's got a lot of upside. His age is right here, and he can come in and really send a message there on the back end of this defense.
Yeah, late second-round pick in 2020, an FCS player out of Southern Illinois who, JT, you know this, I do the draft for NFL radio, and there was a lot of excitement when he got picked because a lot of people liked what he did in a lot of the pre-draft stuff. And, in talking with a friend of mine who works for the Carolina Panthers, where he played before the last year at Washington, the exact quote that I got in talking about Jeremy Chin was, if Pete Carroll can recreate couple of years in Carolina, he got a major playmaker. Yeah. And that's what you're looking for. Patrick Graham, we sit with him all the time. He is constantly talking about guys who cause turnovers, guys who are trying to get the ball. That is the number one thing for his defense. And 2 years ago, that was a major upswing. And last year it kind of fell back again. So if Jeremy Chin can recreate some of those times that he had with Carolina, and he stayed on the field. He made a lot of tackles with Washington last year. But if he can kind of recreate that from 2022, 2023, then I think the Raiders did get a player that's going to be very productive. The other part to it, JT, you're talking about a guy who's still only 27 years old, and just turned 27. So he's still a relatively young player in this league.
Eric Stokes is interesting to me because not only is he a redeemable player, former first-round pick, but he could start. Or he could be, if a starter goes down, if we look at Jacorian Bennett, the future of Jack Jones, Pete Carroll is all about competition. And I'm telling this to Raider Nation, and if I'm wrong, you know where to find me. This is exactly what Pete Carroll wants to do. He wants to put competition into every practice. This guy's going to be competing to start. And if he gets beat out, he'll be ready to go again. But can you imagine what Pete Carroll's going to do to try to rebuild this secondary and his liking along with Patrick Graham? They're going to have the competition at the highest level. And if he can get back to an ability where he's healthy and he's playing like a first-round pick, that's going to be a great potential starter and depth pick for the Silver and Black.
Well, and you meant the competition part of it. I mean, the other aspect about a guy like Eric Stokes, JT, is that you're talking about a guy who's on a one-year deal. It becomes kind of a prove-it thing. And he's had MCL issues. He's had list frank. There's things you can't control. But you're talking about a guy that we've mentioned this 3 or 4 times now, first-round talent, played like a first-round talent, ran a 4.340. Like, so you got the speed, you got the 6'1" size, you've got a guy that wasn't necessarily exposed on the outside very often when he's been on the field. And so there's a motivation factor there, right? You get that chance, you know where you were drafted, you know the frustration he's had. And so you do have that. Again, you and I don't know Eric Stokes, so I don't really have that relationship to tell you what his motivating factors are or what he's all about. We'll get to know him over the next few months. But just from an outside looking in, that fits all the characteristics that you were just talking about.
Well, I want to get to one more player, Landon Roberts, who comes in from Pittsburgh. Really similar story to Robert Spillane coming in from Pittsburgh. And if you talked about it with PFF, if you put the numbers side by side, when he got an opportunity to play, he is really good against the run. He's got to improve in pass coverage there. But another guy who can play behind the line of scrimmage and sniff out the football, something that Pete Carroll and especially Patrick Graham are going to want to see here. He's on a one-year deal also. He's on a prove-it deal, and this guy could really have an opportunity to have an impact early with the Raiders.
Yeah, a little older guy, right? Been around the league. He started, give or take, about 3 years in his career. Been to New England and then Miami, and then the last couple of years with Pittsburgh. But he's had north of 100 tackles a couple times in his career, and then was playing again last year with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, again, a veteran. On a defense that at this point right now, JT, it used to be a young defense. It's not a young defense anymore. Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, Adam Butler, Landon Roberts, those are older guys at this point. We'll see what happens with Marcus Epps coming off the injury if he's brought back. But this is now becoming, at least in the front seven, an older defense, not a younger defense. And I don't mean old like past their prime old, but old like experienced 6, 7, 8-year guys. And up front, you're talking about guys who have proven it. Landon Roberts has played big minutes for teams that have gone to the playoffs. The Dolphins went when he was there. Steelers have gone to the playoffs and on a defense that's been very productive, and that carried them the last couple of years. So he's been in those situations, and he'll step in. But, the other part, JT, we've spent this whole time talking about the defense. I think the thing to this point that has surprised me, and I know, a lot of this is about the guys the Raiders have brought in, and we just went through all of them. I think the thing that has surprised me at this point is that other than Geno Smith, there hasn't really been anything brought in on the offensive side of the ball. Alex Kappa before free agency on Monday because of him being cut by Cincinnati, and he's a guy that's got to prove it because he struggled in 2024 but was very good the 2 years before that. But nothing on the outside yet, backfield yet. Everyone knows that the Raiders were coming up in a historically bad rushing year. Free agents in the backfield with both Madison and Amir Abdullah. So there's a lot to do there on the offensive end. Now, what does that mean at the 6th pick? Are they moving back? Are they moving up? Who knows, right? We have no idea. For all we know, they still want to draft a quarterback and develop that behind Geno Smith. We don't know. Obviously, it doesn't seem that way. But I do think that'll be interesting here as the first 3 or 4 days of free agency, JT, as we're taping this, are coming to a close. And there are still some of those bigger name offensive linemen and or receivers who haven't been signed yet. And you wonder if there's some thought there about trying to bring a couple of those guys in.
Well, thanks for joining us. I can't wait for your Geno touchdown call with Brock Bowers. I'm looking forward to that in the preseason. And
working on it. We're working on it.
Take care, my friend. Thanks for joining us. There he is, everybody. Jason Horowitz, the voice of the Silver and Black. When we come back, Amber Theoharis from the Silver and Black Show will join us. We'll get her opinion on Raiders free agency as we continue with the special edition of Raiders Rundown.
Raider Nation, excited to keep going on this journey with y'all. Love this organization. Raiders!
One of the best pass rushers in the league, no doubt about it. He proves it every week.
He's one of those guys who can wreck a game at any point in the game.
He is going to be a problem the whole time he plays in this league.
I love what I do. I'm obsessed with what I do. I'm obsessed with being the best at what I do.
A one-man wrecking crew on national television.
He's just a disruptive force.
All that matters is today. Stay present, man. 3.5 hours, do this together, man. It starts with us, it ends with us.
I don't think I've ever seen somebody play football at the level Max Brock does.
Gang on me, gang on 3, 1, 2, 3, gang!
Crosby in his face, and he drives him to the turf at the 17. He takes him off the middle, and he's wrapped up from behind. Guess who? Max Crosby.
You're seeing him taking the game from being great to legendary.
And he's set for the safety. Crosby and Nickel, they squished him to the turf.
He's the best defensive player in football right now. I mean, it's not even close, really.
He's just born to be a Raider.
I'm so far from where I want to be with this Hall of Famer. I want to be a great player.
What's up, Raider Nation? Happy to be back. Happy to get back to work. And Raiders!
I hear it all the time. People always, have something to say. People like to spin their own narrative and say certain things about myself. And honestly, I look at it as a compliment. Without, the hard work, the dedication, the sacrifice on a daily basis, I wouldn't be in a position, that I'm in today. So all the rumors, all that stuff, I just let it go because I know what I'm doing on a daily basis. I'm working my ass off. I think people get it misconstrued. I have a million people in here ask me today, don't leave, man, don't leave, all this. And I trust me, I hear it all. No, it's really.
I love it, man. Matter of fact, when I walked in the locker room, I thought I was going to start crying.
It's fantastic. It's a beautiful stadium.
Just win, baby. Commitment to excellence, the will to win.
It's all about competition. And, I feel like certain people are meant to be in your life for a reason. We all have the same goal, and that's to win. That's what I'm all about.
Definitely a good feeling when you come back to a comfortable position with people that you know and trust, people that you played before. Amazing feeling. Felt like a weight lifted off my shoulder, so I'm happy.
Welcome back to Raiders Rundown, our free agent special. Just a quick story. As you were watching on YouTube, you saw Max Crosby at the Commitment to Excellence Awards. I had the pleasure of emceeing that, and when we brought Max up, the crowd went crazy for him to stay. And Max paused, and the crowd went crazy. Max is here. Max is locked up long term, and that was a big night as he's a 4-time winner in a row of the Commitment to Excellence Awards. JT, back with you at Raiders headquarters. Amber Theoharis does everything for us here at Silver and Black Productions, and she's kind enough to join us. And Amber, great to see you. And let's jump right in on the Max extension. It's a big part of this offseason. It's a chunk of money, but it ties them up here long term with the Silver and Black.
It's good to see you too, JT, and Happy New Year.
Yes.
Happy Raiders New Year to you. The Raiders got started early, and that, I think, is lost. Everybody looks for a big splash in free agency, right? Who's the big name you're going to bring in? Well, sometimes making sure that you take care of your own biggest name is the biggest splash that you can make. So to me, making sure that Max Crosby is happy, that he's going to be here a long time, was the biggest move that they're going to make this offseason because he's their most important player. Second biggest move, of course, getting the quarterback in Geno Smith, and I absolutely love that move. And so far, we're getting a look at John Spytek for the first time. I mean, I've covered him, you've covered him on the national level with Tampa Bay, but getting to see kind of the really cerebral, smart moves that he is making early on here.
I'm really excited to hear your opinion on Geno Smith. Your work with NFL Radio, all your years covering the league. What you think about Geno, because it's a tale of two careers, a draft pick who didn't play much. Then he became a backup who didn't even play as a backup. There were times where he didn't even play throughout seasons, so he didn't take all those hits. And then he gets an opportunity with Pete Carroll in Seattle, and his career takes off.
It's crazy. You see a guy that comes in his rookie year with the Jets in 2013 with high hopes. He starts 16 games in his rookie season. And then you know, it just kind of falls by the wayside, and he's in New York for a long time. He played, you know, was on with the Chargers. He goes to Seattle. He's a backup. Then he gets an opportunity a couple years ago where Pete Carroll said, all right, you're going to be the starter. And I had a chance that year to really cover him pretty closely because I was assigned to the playoff game that the Seahawks were in that year against the 49ers. And I got a chance to see Pete Carroll up close and personal with Geno Smith on the sidelines and their interactions. And you could see the relationship there. You could see that Geno felt like he owed Pete a lot and that he wanted to succeed for Pete. And then I saw that, and you could really see how much Pete loves his players and the players love Pete. We all know that. But then I got to speak to and sit down with Geno when he first made his first Pro Bowl that year. So got to interview him at the Pro Bowl. And he just always thought he had it in him. He just never thought he had the coach or the right people to support him. And then, you know, he said all it took was Pete Carroll to say, you're the guy, you're going to do this. And he did it. And he's done it now, you know, a couple years in a row, 2 Pro Bowls. He's a guy that's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, 70% completion percentage, threw for over 4,000 yards. I'm excited. I think Seattle's crazy, to be honest. I mean, this is a win for the Raiders. Seattle was crazy to let him go without a real viable plan. And I think this is the best case scenario because, look, there's a million teams out there right now as free agencies beginning looking for quarterbacks. And the Raiders kind of have that luxury saying, okay, we've got one that we feel really good about rolling out there week 1.
Yeah, what makes sense to me more so than anything is the Pete Carroll connection. Some were talking about Russell Wilson, who's still out there now. And if you look at Sam Darnold, who ended up there, could he have been with the Raiders? You never know. But I think that they jumped on this quickly because it comes down to leadership and chemistry and working in this new Pete Carroll system with Tom Brady in the building and John Spytek. And the more I dove into it and then looked at Geno's numbers and watched him play, he's just a leader. And Pete needs that now because he hasn't coached a game yet with the Raiders. So I think the comfort zone with both of them are going to come together and has a lot of upside here if Geno plays better than he's already played throughout his career.
You just listed the people around him. Think about the people that are in the building right now for the Raiders. And you didn't even mention Chip Kelly.
Yeah,
you know, so
absolutely.
Think about what situation Geno Smith is in. He's got a great GM, a Super Bowl winning GM. He's got the greatest quarterback of all time in the front office, offering any advice and any help that he can in Tom Brady. You've got Pete Carroll, who he's already, seen success with and been competitive with. And then Chip Kelly. This is going to be interesting to see what the offense looks like with the Geno Smith, Chip Kelly kind of combination. So I think he's in a great position once again. I mean, think about it, JT. How many places have you been in your career where you had a boss or someone that really believed in you? Don't you feel like you reached your potential? Those were the places that you grew. And if you ever had a chance to work with them again, you would jump at it because you were your best self with those people that believed on you early on when nobody else did. And you tend to rise to the occasion for those people. And that's why I think this connection with Pete Carroll and Geno Smith is going to be really good. For the first time, they'll be my 4th season with the Raiders, but I've covered them for 2 decades on a national level. This is the first time in a long time, and I feel really, really excited and kind of confident that, okay, no matter what happens in the draft, they've got somebody, they've got an adult, they've got a leader, somebody that can lead that room and lead this offense.
Well, I know how much you love the draft and you love fantasy football, and you're a savant with numbers. What does this do with the draft with the 6th pick overall? Because if Geno's not in the building, and he's about to, right, pending sources, Geno will be a done deal, and Sam Darnold's with Seattle, and we look at all the other movement around the league, the Raiders were staring at 6, and people were saying Shador, it might be too low for Cam, and Dart, and all that. Now that Geno's in the building, and this deal's about to get officially done, this changes everything when you look at the Raiders with the best available player, potentially at number 6.
It absolutely changes everything. It means that the Raiders do not have to stretch for need. They do not have to. How many times do we see a top 10 quarterback be a bust? They're a bust more than they are not. I think it's 60% or something crazy like that in the top 10. Don't go on to a second contract or become a backup by their second contract. So we see year after year after year people reach for a quarterback simply because they need one. And this was one of the years where there's some debate as to whether this quarterback class is deep enough to take in the top 5, or top 1 or 2. I think Cam Ward probably will be taken. I don't know where Shedeur will be taken. I think there's a chance he'll be there. And if the Raiders feel like that is somebody they really like, then they are in a great position of now having some time and some patience to develop Shedeur rather than try to throw him in there if he happens to be there and that's the guy that they like. What this move did by signing Geno Smith early was it gave them time. It allowed them to chill out and take who they want to take. Maybe they want to take another player that's a once-in-a-generation player like a Brock Bowers that's not a quarterback. That's sitting there at number 6. They have a chance to take the best player on the board and then still maybe get a Jackson Dart, a Jalen Milroe, somebody else you can develop a little bit later in the draft. So this really just put them in a kind of a driver's seat position of saying we do not have to stretch. We do not have to make, Shedeur or Cam. I don't think Cam will be there, but if Shedeur is fit into a square peg into a round hole right away.
Well, we're looking at a graphic here with Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. Will Howard is the hot take around here because he went to Ohio State, won a championship with Chip Kelly, and then Jackson Dart, who I like a lot, Dylan Gabriel.
I like Jackson Dart.
Absolutely. Yeah. But what I always say, and I want to throw some respect, like you will too, on Aiden O'Connell's name. He's in the building. He's in the building today. And he is a 4th-round quarterback who I think would be a 3rd or 2nd-round quarterback now. So is it important to go and get a backup quarterback when you already have Aiden O'Connell here who's going to compete? Because Pete Carroll's going to want competition here. I say definitely get a quarterback in this draft. But the point is, the farther you go and wait, you already have that guy with Aiden O'Connell. So I'm going to be fascinated if Chip Kelly and Tom Brady and Pete Carroll say, no, we have to get that quarterback in the 2nd, 3rd round because we love that player and we didn't think he'd be available. Let's go get him.
But what Aiden O'Connell does is makes, again, it gives them the freedom. They can relax. They're in the driver's seat. They can say, you know what? We really love Jalen Milroe or somebody that is down there. We don't think he's ready. We need to work on his passing. We don't think he's ready just yet, but we really love him. We could take him if we really want to, and we could develop him. But we also have Aiden O'Connell, so we don't feel like we need to go get a backup necessarily. We don't have to do that right now. It just allows them to chill out, and I love that. I think they're in such a great position, and people are under-reporting this. You bring up such a great point, JT, the AOC. I think he's a guy that could be like, like a Kurt Warner or within our own organization, Rich Gannon, somebody that kind of comes around a little bit later and really shocks people because I like what he has.
Well, you're the queen of the media, radio, and TV tease. We have Eric Allen coming up, so I'm going to turn it over to you. What would you like to say about our next guest in the great Eric Allen?
Coming up next is the Hall of Famer Eric Allen, who will be joining us to talk about Jeremy Chin and what the Raiders are going to do in the secondary and how they're going to have Hall of Fame play just like him. We cannot wait for Canton. Are you going to go out there? I'm just going to spend my own money and go out to see my guy.
I will see you there.
Can't wait.
Thank you, Amber. Eric Allen joins us next as we continue on Raiders Rundown.
Commitment to excellence. That's what this organization is all about. If there's one thing I know about football, it's hard.
Who will be the next Raiders head coach to lead the Silver and Black into Allegiant Stadium?
MD is going to introduce you, and then you're going up to the stage you're sitting. Here to introduce the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders.
We're going to come find you guys and get this thing rolling as soon as possible. I'm anticipating that we're going to find that rhythm right here, right now. Everybody's going to hear us.
Today's a special day. Being a part of Raider Nation, being here, almost 7 years now, it's been an absolute blessing in so many ways. My family, obviously my wife, my daughter here today, the nonstop commitment to excellence on a daily basis is what this is all about. So now I'm just worried and focused on being the best version of myself every single day and giving them everything I got.
There's no way we could find anybody that is more focused and directed and committed to giving everything he's got to every opportunity he's going to get.
It's not about what I've done, it's about what I'm going to do, and that's what my focus is right now.
It's game day, the day we've been waiting for. And this is more than just a game. It's a passion, a lifestyle. It's time to suit up, Raider Nation. This is Raiders football, where we all bleed silver and black. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. Here at the Raider Image, you're part of our team. Every hat, every piece of gear. Let your loyalty show out. Whether you're in the stands or cheering from home, we've got your back. Feel the confidence, own the game.
We
are the Raider Image. Your game, your gear. Exclusively at the Raider Image.
Just win, baby. Commitment to excellence, the will to win.
It's all about competition, and I feel like certain people are meant to be in your life for a reason. We all have the same goal, and that's to win. That's what I'm all about.
Definitely a good feeling when you come back to a comfortable position with people that you know and trust, people that you played before. Amazing feeling. Felt like a weight lifted off my shoulder, so I'm happy.
Welcome back to Raiders Rundown. It's our free agency edition. I'm JT at Raiders headquarters. Thanks for joining us here. Our great loyal viewers on YouTube and all the platforms here at Raiders.com and Silver and Black Productions. And we're just going through a fluid moment now as players are going to be coming into the building. The league year started today, so these deals are starting to become official. Some of them are not technically official just yet, but we got an idea of what the Raiders are doing here in the offseason. And we bring in Eric Allen, soon-to-be Hall of Famer, as he'll have his induction in Canton this summer. I'm getting used to saying that with my partner, EA. How are you, EA? Good to see you.
Good to see you, JT. Really busy right now with the free agency going crazy, but I'm still floating on cloud nine with the Hall of Fame and everything.
You should. This is a great celebration of you, and I know how humble you are, so you enjoy this. It's going to be a great summer. Let's get into free agency so far, and I think the big storyline is Max Crosby before we get into the players, the new players here. The fact that extension came through early, and it costs money, and they're going to be able to structure it correctly to make it friendly for the organization. How important was it to reward Max for everything that he's done, but what he's going to do in the future?
Well, we all know he's one of the best players in the National Football League. His story has been told so many times, but he is a true Raider. I'm not sure if there's a player that you can mention now that in any era, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, that is more of a Raider than Max Crosby. Just phenomenal job. His work ethic, the way he plays, doesn't take any time off. He's committed to the game. He understands kind of what it takes to be a Raider, and he wants to see this football team very successful. So I'm so excited they rewarded someone like Max Crosby.
Well, you retired as a Raider, and once a Raider, always a Raider, and now we get to add Trayvon Merrick to the list of players that are going to leave this organization but always be welcome back. He had a really good run here with the Silver and Black. He was rewarded with it. Carolina saw him, targeted him, and gave him a number that he couldn't refuse here. What would you say about the loss and what he's going to do going forward in this league?
Yeah, great job of him maturing, coming in, being one type of player, and then developing. I think through all of the coaching changes and styles that we went through the last 3 or 4 years, he was one of those guys who continued to get better. Didn't really get to that, All-MAC or Pro Bowl status yet, but he was on his way. But that's what you need to do. As a football team, you need to get a player in, develop him, make sure he's the kind of football player that really respects the game and understands the game. But you know what? He played great, so he's able to get his money day, and we kind of moved on. But I really liked him as a player, and definitely off the field, done a really good job of being a Raider on the field and off the field, just an amazing man.
Jeremy Chinn's an interesting player, the size of him, and you go back with Pete Carroll, and when we sat in the studio with him, he likes a typical bigger-sized safety that could come into the box and lay the hammer down, and he had a couple of those in the Legion of Boom. So I think Jeremy Chinn comes over from the Commanders with a lot of upside here. We know what he can do in the box. He'll have to improve when it comes to coverage overall, but someone who will compete here and maybe be a cornerstone of this new defense.
Yeah, without a doubt. Obviously, coming from the Washington Commanders, Dan Quinn. Obviously, Dan Quinn was under Pete at Seattle, so that kind of transition is not going to be very difficult for him. He's going to come in and play that middle safety role. A lot of what we saw last season, by both of our safeties, being a middle of the football field, being a disruptor in the middle of the field. Coming off a really solid year last year. I thought he was really an impactful player in the middle of the football field. Obviously, I think we have two safeties who can play on that back end, but Jeremy Chinn, man, outstanding pickup for the Raiders to be able to kind of dominate the middle of the football field with the loss of our middle linebacker, Robert Spillane. Really love the way Jeremy Chinn has really blossomed as a professional football player.
Yeah, and I want to stay with that because I like timing. And what happened here, as soon as Trayvon Merrick was gone, we blinked and Jeremy Chinn was here. And believe me, there were other GMs going after him and other teams, and the price was right. And I think if it took another 4, 5, 6 hours, he wouldn't be here and there'd be no Jeremy Chinn or Trayvon Merrick. I think that's a really good player coming in here, and the Raiders needed to lock down that position quickly.
Well, JT, that's a great point. And when you're a free agent, when you're out there, you're looking for situations that will kind of help you. Positions, football teams, style of play, coaches are familiar with vocabulary, those kind of things really help you make those decisions. So when you're a Washington Commander, understand the defensive philosophy, understand the communication that you need to have with the front end and the back end, and you've done that over and over again and had successful time at that. So we're getting a player who's going to come in, understand the vocabulary, understand where he needs to be as far as timing, when you're blitzing, when you're playing zone concepts. I think he's a really good pickup, and maybe the relationship with Dan and Pete kind of swayed him to make that decision to become a Raider.
Tell Raider Nation, Eric, what you think about Isaiah Palomal. He had an opportunity to start because of what happened with Marcus Epps and his injury and just play more and more. And he seemed to become very comfortable, and he started playing more aggressive. He got better as the season went on as Patrick Graham gave him more responsibility.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think when you see these 2 or 3 safeties coming off, he's going to really have to show that he can kind of be in the middle of the football field if he's going to beat Isaiah out. When we sat and talked to Coach Carroll a couple months ago when he first signed, he talked about competition. In that safety room now, you have 3 safeties in there who can do a little bit of both. They can play the deep half. They can play quarters, which the Seattle Seahawks were known for, playing quarters. So that looks like 2 safeties in the middle of the football field. Both guys can do that. Both guys can roll in the box. All 3 guys can roll in the box. So it's going to be a competitive training camp. And I think if you have Isaiah, who's able to play that middle safety and be able to continue to be able to roam from numbers to numbers, make those big plays in the secondary, he's going to put a lot of pressure on Epps to be able to, get back on the football field and get that playing time. So you see now that this secondary is going to be varied. It's going to be opportunities for all these young guys to be able to get in and prove what they can do.
I'd like you to elaborate on competition. I see the Reggie White jersey over your shoulder. You played with some of the greatest football players of all time. You helped mentor Charles Woodson. You practiced against Jerry Rice and Tim Brown and Rich Gannon. What do you know about Pete Carroll when we hear about this competition with Pete and how he expects it to be there? Because former coaches that were here were very competitive, and we wish him well, but Pete's on a different level. What have you thought of since Pete Carroll's come in here and how the culture is going to change at practice when it comes to the week of the game, meetings and all this competition with Pete Carroll? What should our viewers know about that?
That's a great point, JT. First of all, it has to be a organizational-wide effort to everyone be on the same page. And I'm talking about everyone, me and you included. We need to be on the same page. So he's going to have days where training room has to know that it's going to be a physical day. So if you're in a training room, if you're in the weight room, maybe not lift as hard as you might on a Wednesday, because we're really going to have a physical day on Wednesday. So we need the guys to be fresh, ready to go. So earlier, if I'm kind of an older guy, I'm going to come in early, get a good lather up, and make sure after practice I'm in the cold tub. So everyone in the building is going to know that on physical days, you got to take light in the weight room. You got to really take care of your body as far as the training room is concerned. And then the meal time, make sure you're getting a lot of protein in. So it's just not about football. It's about all those other things that surround football that everyone needs to be pulling and pushing in the same direction. That's the first thing. The second thing is you have to learn from your prior mistakes. So that requires you to, after practice, get back in the film room. Don't go home. Don't go in the weight room. Go to the film room. Get the film. Hey, man, in this situation here, I thought you were going to, take, the second receiver, and I was going to take the first guy. Why didn't we communicate that well? So those things are really important to help you next practice. So then when the same situation comes up, you've proven to the coaches that you've learned from that mistake. So those kind of things are going to be critical for these players who are in these practices who don't have a nailed down job to be able to learn after each play, after each practice. You got to see it on film. You got to prove it on film. And let the coaches know that you've learned from your mistakes and others' mistakes, because those are the things that are going to get you more playing time. If a coach understands and knows that you've made a mistake, but you've corrected that mistake yourself, and the next day you're a better player. That's what competition is all about. It should bring out the best in all of you, physically and mentally.
Well, I'll be talking to you a lot, seeing you a lot, but everybody's got Canton circled in August. So for your family and everybody involved there, enjoy it. We'll be talking to you before the draft and all the other work here you do at Silver and Black Productions. Again, I'm proud of you, man. This is going to be a great summer based around a great chapter in your life. Good seeing you.
Hey, man, always the best, JT. I love you guys, man. Take care, guys.
Yeah, there he is, Eric Allen. How great is that? I just want to pause for a second and say how blessed we are to have him. The guests we had were fantastic today. Amber Theoharis, and especially Jason Horowitz, who kicked off the show. But EA, he's a guy that you can give him film on a guy like Jeremy Chin. And I did and say, hey, get back to me quickly. And 45 minutes later, he gives me one or two things for radio. And he's going to be a tremendous asset here because he knows defense so well, and Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham together are going to be able to morph this team, and whoever they get to work with, and John Spidtek's able to draft or still sign in free agency, and put together a level of competition that might change everything here. As we get ready to move forward, coming up next, there's still more room in free agency. The Raiders have several more players that they can decide to sign or not. And let's see what type of deals they get along the way. And then the focus will be coming up with the NFL draft. If you look at some of the remaining free agents as we wrap this up, Amari Cooper, I see Stephon Diggs there. I saw Cooper Kupp getting released. There's players around the league that are pretty good, and they're available. And then I think we're going to see, this is my prediction, we're going to see a lot of trades at the draft level, because I think there are going to be teams that want to trade up or trade back, and we're going to see some moves along the way. But for me, as I look at day one and day two, which was Monday and Tuesday, as we record this on Wednesday, my personal takes away, number one, was Max Crosby's extension. Massive. Can't let him walk. Number two, Geno Smith. As per sources, Geno Smith will be the quarterback here. That is massive because it gives the Raiders a lot of flexibility when it comes to the quarterback position later in the draft or what they want to do with the best player available. I love that. Didn't want to feel that the Raiders had to do something and were forced to do something there. And then I think the Raiders have a lot of draft equity to do a lot and get 4, 5, 6, 7 players to come in and 3 or 4 starters in this draft, high in the draft. I think John Spytek is ready to pounce. And he showed us a lot in free agency so far, that they're going to be responsible with the cap. They're going to keep some money here on the sideline to go pounce. But they got their quarterback in face of the franchise here, and that's really important. For everyone at Silver and Black Productions, I'm JT. Thanks for joining us on this special edition of Raiders Rundown. Keep it here at Raiders.com and the Raiders YouTube channel, Instagram, X, Facebook, and we'll keep you up to speed on all the breaking news surrounding the Silver and Black. Thank you very much for joining us.